Welcome to the Dave Palma Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail?
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palma.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show. Today, we're going to talk politics in this episode, and I have a regular contributor with me in this episode where we will talk about the Afghanistan crisis. 2 decades after they were driven out, the Taliban returned to power in Kabul last weekend. After the US invasion in 2001, weeks after the 9/11 attacks, the Taliban withdrew, and many of its fighters took refuge in neighbouring Pakistan. I'm going to ask the question, what's changing over the last 20 years and what's happened next? So with me is Christian Hanley, I should say. Christian Hanley, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'm tripping over my tongue a few times there. Anyway, I'm not drunk, honestly.
It's all right if you are. The time difference here, it's 5 p.m. in the UK. You're fine. Go for it.
Yeah. Well, I've had my sleep and ready for my sleep later. So, yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's all going on at the moment around the world. Obviously, people must be hearing about it all over the place, but obviously UK and US, obviously sort of in the forefront of it, and Europe, but obviously neighbouring countries as well. Obviously Pakistan, and the borders must be, filled with people trying to escape and stuff like that. So I will ask the question, with the Afghanistan crisis, what has changed in the last 20 years and what happens next?
So I can only speak to that so much from sort of the internal U.S. domestic political side, because I don't have the expertise of, being on the ground there. In fact, on my own podcast, Keep It in Perspective, I'm going to have a friend of mine join me in the coming weeks who, before he was a journalist, actually was an officer who trained Afghan fighters to resist the Taliban and resist terrorism. So he'll be a great asset to talk to in the coming weeks. But in terms of what's changed here in the U.S., which spearheaded and led the fight in Afghanistan and the resulting occupation, is the war weariness. And it's not even maybe war weariness is a strong term. The sense of apathy that has come over the electorate, where there was this desire for not just justice but even perhaps vengeance 20 years ago, and now it's been, like you said, 2 decades. I mean, for perspective, when this all happened, I was still in school. Now I have, white hair in my beard and I have a child of my own. A lot has changed. And we went from sort of this operation that was to be honest, sold to us. It was marketed to the electorate during the George W. Bush administration and by the media then, as much like the way that World War I was sold, we'll all be home by Christmas. Let's just get it done with. Right. And then we were stuck there for years, and it became, from my perspective, it ended up being essentially a war of attrition, right? Where you've got one empire, one larger country, if you will, that has to keep on resupplying and sending in more people, sending in more money, sending in more fuel, more machines, more resources. And then for those who actually live there on the ground, it was with the Taliban, it was just a matter of waiting. There was no way. In other words, I think the real discussion to be had right now is how could the tactics, how could the details of the exit strategy have been better planned and executed? But the departure had to come at some point. This couldn't last forever. Yeah. And I have not heard any reasonable argument yet about how Afghanistan would be a self-governing democratic entity after any Western forces departed.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I mean, of course, yesterday, very sadly, we've seen this now attacked by ISIS. Well, ISIS-K, they call themselves, but obviously it's a chapter or division of the terrorist group. And couldn't you have seen this happening or coming? Because I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, we're going to withdraw, and now all of a sudden, even soldiers get blown up. I mean, I'm not saying it in a horrible way, but that's kind of like, to me, that spells out war.
Yeah, and so I mean that there was a question. I'm not sure if you caught it in the UK. It would have been very late in the day for you yesterday, but late yesterday afternoon here on the eastern seaboard of the U.S., President Biden did hold a press conference where he was asked about that. Are there any plans for reprisals on the part of the U.S.? And essentially, he said he's communicating with his generals, with his commanders, and he'll offer whatever resources they request, and listen to their expertise. Again, though, I think that's where we're really getting into the weeds about the details, because I think, at least in U.S. media right now, and I can only speak to that for the moment, there's this conflating of the overarching strategy. What was the plan for 1, 5, 10, 20 years, right? And then what are the details of how that is wrapped up? And those are two different conversations. One is what was the goal? What was the objective? What was supposed to be accomplished during that time in Afghanistan? And the other question is, okay, once that time is over, which it has now been decided that it is, how is the exit strategy implemented? And that, I think, is where there's the images show just how it was not properly executed.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought that. I mean, especially America and UK as well. We've got obviously very good intelligence with our security, national security, and then the military.
Yes.
We also have like the MI5 and 6, which is like the CIA. So we have all that resources, and it's it's kind of like world class. Amongst other parts of the world. Maybe Russia has a little bit of a system. Historically that they try and spy back. They're still spying.
Well, yes, but the US and UK have these pesky things like laws and human rights. So
well, that's the thing. So the fact is that they could have really seen this coming, especially with a terrorist attack. Could they have not used a different strategy? Like military strategies are used everywhere. They use like hush, quiet ones, where you don't even see it coming. I mean, that's how they got Bin Laden in the end,
Right.
And then they do some, blatant ones. And this seems like a blatant pull the rug out of your feet rather than let's quietly get these refugees out slowly. And before we even, a month later, there'll be hardly anyone left when we say we're going to move the military. Could you have used a different...
And I think that's sort of the question that on everyone's lips here in Washington is why wasn't that the case? Why was that evacuation not happening slowly, incrementally, perhaps under the cover of night, bit by bit, in the weeks leading up to now? Why is it now happening after the official date of getting, just get everybody out? Why was that the timeline? It seems completely backward, and we haven't heard an answer yet.
Yeah, because ISIS, for example, wouldn't have heard a thing about it if they've used, more of a quiet undercover way of doing it, with their kind of strong intelligence system.
Now, what I will say is that in the press conference yesterday, President Biden did say that his rationale was essentially that there had been an agreement between the Trump administration and the Taliban about if the implementation of the departure were to proceed, then there'd be sort of an agreement or an informal agreement that no Americans would be harmed. But then you have to think, okay, but why did the Trump administration even believe that? Why would they even? It still is amazing to a lot of us here that the prior administration would even attempt to negotiate with the Taliban. I mean, we were told for years that they were, criminals, terrorists, this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden it's, well, we're tired of being there, so let's talk to the guys. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're saying that the Taliban is a very different. Well, I mean, it probably could be a front they're put in, and obviously, like anything in politics or whatever, you say one thing and something else could be done, So, but with Taliban, obviously, it's kind of like don't trust them. But the Americans seem to be trusting them. They've kind of like been speaking to the CIA and kind of like had peace talks in America with the leaders and stuff like that.
Yeah, and what's really odd too, you talk about the difference in 20 years, is the Taliban now seems to have a press secretary or someone a media advisor or something. I mean, they're posing for photo ops. They're talking about not having the same hard lines on a lot of issues. They're promising, I don't want to say reforms, but less harsh treatment of women, I guess is what they're attempting to say. But look, 20 years ago, if you turned on the news in the US, it was the Taliban just the same old cliches, right? Crouching out behind some rocks and taking shots at overhead aircraft and firing on civilians and things like that, doing drills and exercises in the desert and swinging on the bars at the gym. Now they're posing inside offices. They're making it seem as though they're a legitimate political movement. It's as if they've planned to have someone groom them for this position.
Well, that's what they do. I mean, in any kind of political party that sings a bit kind of, we don't want that kind of politics going on or whatever. I mean, even ISIS could probably try and do that, on a later kind of, 5 years or whatever down the road, maybe. But
but it's a shocking departure from their previous position. And maybe I shouldn't say position, from their previous image. I doubt their position has changed very much on a lot of matters, but this whole idea of being the newer, friendlier Taliban is something I don't think anybody saw coming.
Yeah. Well, as I say, they could be just saying that. I mean, really.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Do you think that many residents will still fear retaliatory killings and women will fear for their safety?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that's something that we are fiercely debating here in the U.S. is what about all of the people who helped translate for American soldiers and contractors? What about everyone who were guides to American soldiers and contractors? Don't we owe a debt and obligation to get them out safely? And what we've heard so far is that the process for doing that has been just completely labor intensive, and that there are essentially just a handful of individuals on the ground in Kabul processing those applications and getting people ready to depart, which, if better planned, there should have been an entire office dedicated to that and expediting the process.
And they should have had it all ready and go,
right. I mean, it should have been done in the first place. Yeah,
exactly. Because especially with the British system's probably a little bit slower with all this, because they're, just immigration is just very tight in terms of that. So it's a lot of kind of bureaucracy going on. And that seemed to have still been going on, even with the quick kind of, we need to make this decision in 1-2 days, people were waiting because of that. I suppose it might have been the same for US, would it?
I mean, and maybe this is not as well known in the UK, but actually our immigration system is very broken as well. And it's, there's not the same crunch for space and resources here, obviously, but it doesn't mean that there isn't still a big bureaucratic mess, the same as in the UK. And so, and of course, there's a lot of the anti-immigrant sentiment right now. It's the same as in the UK. It seems to just be this perennial thing that humans every couple of decades have to, blame everything on other people.
Well, that's yeah.
It seems to happen in just about every country.
Game. No one gets away with the playing game.
Right. So and so in our system as well, there's really is no one line or queue, as you would say. There's not one pathway in. There are, work visas, refugees. There's several different channels or means of getting into the country. But for something like this, where you were an asset to the U.S. military, you'd think there'd be an expedited process. Yeah. There was actually one article recently about how I believe it was Guam or other Pacific islands that are U.S. territories had played a role as kind of a halfway point to process refugees from Vietnam after that conflict, after that war. Okay. And there's like, why can't we do something comparable now? Have folks come into a safe place, get the paperwork sorted, and then take it from there? Why have people hang out in limbo and hang out in harm's way?
Seems to be really badly organized. But you mentioned Vietnam. People have actually compared this to Saigon, haven't they? The similar kind of situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you agree with that, yeah?
Well, I'm not sure I would totally agree with it. I mean, it's... that was before my time. I mean, anything there. I'm referring to I'm referring to from books and
Well, like, I was just born then.
But no personal experience witnessing it. But I mean, and in both instances, you had the U.S. going in and trying to fix something that was just beyond the scope of what a military can do. Yeah. In the case of Vietnam, that was where the Cold War really boiled over and got hot, right? And because the West and the Soviet Union did engage in several different proxy wars that used people in smaller, poorer countries as pawns, and Vietnam was where that came to a head. But the idea behind that being containment of communism and containment of the Soviet Union and its satellite states. In this case here with Afghanistan, it was containment of terrorism and essentially finding a way to prevent certain places from becoming what the Bush administration had called breeding grounds or safe havens for terrorism. The problem, though, with Afghanistan is, what was the end game? Bin Laden wasn't there. Bin Laden wasn't there. They drove out the Taliban in the beginning, but then clearly no one read their history because Afghanistan has been ungovernable many times over. It has sapped resources from the Soviets, from the British Empire. There's no place to establish any kind of enduring system, enduring society,
constitution or whatever.
Right,
or society. Yeah,
right. So
they've got no. It's like they've got no direction. The country in terms of where do they belong? That kind of thing.
Well, there's that, and there's also just the physical reality. You're talking about a landlocked, massive mountain ranges and desert and places that if you are an outsider, how do you gain a foothold? I mean, it sapped resources from now 3 successive superpowers.
Yeah, exactly. And I was young enough I think I was 15 years old when the Russians invaded it. So that was quite interesting. But that didn't last long because of the international pressure. I think because I was into track and field, obviously it affected the Olympic Games, Yeah,
exactly.
It took a big hold, the sports and politics was bigger in my mind then, as you know already in my listeners. But certainly Afghanistan does have a history like that. One that's a few of the other questionable things about what's going on, in the UK, a lot of questioning America is I don't know if it was CIA or military, US military at the time, was giving stuff, trusting the Taliban, giving them stuff. I mean, this is just what I'm hearing from the news. Contact details of people that need to be evacuated and where they, were the people that worked with the US that were, I'm not sure if they're talking about US and British nationals, US nationals because it's America, or Afghans that was, allied to the US military there at the time. But the information we're given, and now it's given him almost like a death kind of threat, hasn't it?
I mean, I haven't heard that particular detail. I do know that there are about, I want to say it's 1,500 additional US nationals that still have not been accounted for. And then there's, of course, all the Afghans who provided assistance, translation, guidance, whatever, to the U.S., to the military, and now it's again going back to that earlier point. How do they get out safely? How are their applications processed? How are they safely taken to the U.S.?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's plenty. Certainly, the UK is now closed all evacuation now. Saying it's too dangerous. I don't think they're saying we're giving up. They're just saying, let's pull out. I mean, obviously, me from my firefighting background, if a building's about to collapse and you've got 10 firefighters and a load of civilians still in their place or around, you tell them to all evacuate and get the hell out. It's going to collapse.
Right.
So it's kind of like that, but of course they're going to look at maybe another strategy to get the rest out at a later time. It's probably going to last quite a couple of years or a few years, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, that's again, like sort of the military strategy is kind of beyond my area of expertise, but I would think that just from a planning perspective, they would have initiated this process beforehand, before announcing the end of the military presence. So
I'm surprised actually the Taliban got in so quickly when the Americans saying the deadline's 31st of August. They took over so quickly as soon as Biden announced it last week.
Yeah, I mean, what was the actual timeline from the announcement until Kabul being overrun? It was like 12 days, something like that.
I don't know.
It was something insanely quickly. It happened very quickly.
I would have thought the Taliban would have made an agreement, say, okay, we won't go now do anything until everyone's out by the 31st. But of course, all this mess has happened now, isn't it?
But I guess that goes to my earlier point, and something that I've brought up here in the U.S. plenty, when people love to second guess these decisions, is okay. Like again, when it comes to the details of what the order or what the sequence of events should be during the evacuation or during the final withdrawal. Okay, but bigger picture, going back to the strategy of the war writ large, right? Was that not somehow inevitable at any rate? I mean, again, talking about just the difficulty with governing Afghanistan and the impossibility of occupying it permanently.
Yeah.
At what point would they have not come back and seize control after a foreign power left? Really? I mean, whether we withdrew in, a couple of years in, early 2000s, or 10 years ago, or 10 years in the future from now, would that not still happen? In other words, if there were a clear objective that we were going to go in there and find bin Laden and X, Y, and Z, and then leave after that time, then I think there'd be less of a shock about this. But I think there is some sort of an unspoken expectation that after 20 years, that something there was established. Well, you can't just take, Western, French and English Enlightenment philosophy and American Enlightenment implementation and constitutional norms and governance and just transplant that with, men and guns and say, here you go. I mean, that's not going to work. It's a different culture. It's a different place. And it's not a Western nation. I think there's the unspoken expectation that the duration of time, the 20 years that had passed, would have made that sort of difference. And I think it's very painful for a lot of people to realize that after the initial invasion and clearing out of the Taliban and then the eventual finding and killing of bin Laden, again, not in Afghanistan, but in Pakistan, that the additional years did not amount to a fundamental change in that society.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was always talk, even with, I think Barack Obama's even mentioned that maybe we might be withdrawing the troops, I think. And, so there was always talk about that.
Absolutely,
It probably could have been done a lot earlier, because some of the ex-military now that was out in Afghanistan 20 years, what was that all about? Kind of like Vietnam,
Yeah.
What the hell was that? That's a waste of time, going through all that torture kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
I think 20 years is quite a long time. They overstayed their welcome, if you like, in a nice way.
Well, right. I mean, and we wasted about, by some estimates, between direct expenses with the military, contractors and third parties, things like that, around $2.3 trillion, which the last I checked, I believe is basically the entire economy of Canada for an entire year.
Yeah.
It's a huge amount of money. And, full disclosure for your listeners, you can tell what side of the political spectrum I'm on in my country. But to my mind, in a country where, but there are places in the deep South and the Midwest that are economically depressed that need revitalization. There are schools that are substandard in the richest country in the world. There are highways and bridges that are structurally deficient. And there are children who are drinking unsafe water because the pipes are structurally deficient. That $2 trillion should have gone a very long way in investing in children in this country.
Yeah. No, we say the same thing over in the UK with our equivalent Labour Party, or
right.
more
right.
even some of the Conservatives that are kind of more to the left, more understanding. But even so, it's like when Iraq happened, it's like, well, we could use that money for the same thing in schools and more healthcare or whatever. Even our healthcare system's pretty good, compared to some places, but yeah, that is the thing.
It's a great health system, but it costs a lot of money. I mean, that's just a reality.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely. But yeah, those questions will be asked as well. So let's see there. So two decays. You mentioned Russia. You've mentioned Pakistan. Over those 20 years, I know now they obviously made a little bit more friends with America, but they've pulled out now, and the Taliban's actually had now close ties with Pakistan, Russia, and also China. I've seen clips of them sitting down, the leaders sitting down talking with China. Where do you think this is going to go now with the Taliban?
I mean, that's what we're all waiting to see. Is that an olive branch from those other countries, or is that them now being concerned the U.S. is not going to contain that element in Afghanistan? Don't forget, those are countries that are far more proximate, especially in the case of China, than the U.S. is. And so are those countries there because they want to extend an olive branch and cooperate with this faction, or are they there because they're concerned that the extremism and terrorism could spread outside of that country?
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly ISIS is a very separate group. I mean, even those countries don't like ISIS, Russian.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know what's happening in Pakistan, but even so, even, Muslim intense countries, Indonesia's I think got the highest rate, but they managed to get ISIS out,
Right.
And I was staying in the Philippines. They were in a little corner there somewhere, where the Muslim part of the one of their islands.
Right.
I think they managed to get them out there as well, but it was a big operation from their president. So they're all over the place, but of course, Russia, their new allies, Russia, Pakistan, and China certainly, wouldn't want those groups taking over.
No, of course, yeah.
What I could see is with China, they've been throwing money at different countries. Get them developed. I think Afghanistan and Taliban will look at that side.
Sure. I mean, if you're referring to something like the new Silk Road or that sort of initiative
That's right,
to
yeah.
make China its own center of the world
Yeah.
again.
The Road and Belt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Right. And but that's possible. I'm not sure what their end game would be in Afghanistan there. Maybe more from a security perspective, but from what I can tell, and this is, non-expert here, but from what I can tell, the money that they are throwing around in different countries around the world, it's one part buying influence, it's also another part buying resources. And they invest so heavily in Africa because Africa is so resource rich. I mean,
Right, I'm with you now. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean like the underground resources?
yeah. Well, I mean, why do you build
Minerals and
Right. Why do you build the infrastructure into those places so you can extract the
Yeah.
resources to build your technology, right?
That's right, exactly. And I'm sure that might be like that for Afghanistan. We'll see something anyway. But they've also invested, closer by, like my mum's country in the Caribbean. They've invested in Jamaica. They've been, it's
Yeah.
all over the place,
Yeah.
really. So it's quite
Yeah.
interesting what they're up to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see there. But of course, Russia has a history of countries surrounding, which Afghanistan is surrounding it.
Yeah.
They're still friends with some of them. Some countries aren't. I mean, with Belarus, for example, they've got a leader there that's kind of pro-Russia, the Soviet, whereas
Yeah.
some people didn't like that and want to get out. They're more pro-EU, if you like,
Yeah,
like in
yeah.
what's happening in Ukraine, And so,
No, I mean, Russia has always had its kind of. It's interesting because Russia, when you think about it, even though it was certainly a global superpower from the nuclear deterrent perspective, it really always maintained a status as sort of the world's largest regional power, where it did have satellite states, but for the most part, aside from Cuba, for a strategic purpose, it was really, neighboring states, the Eastern Bloc. Whereas China certainly has much more global aspirations, and in terms of the scale of the two different economies and populations, they're not even close cousins.
yeah.
Wildly
No, that's
different
right.
proportions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Russia just likes to keep their friends from the old Soviet, countries that are around them, and
Right.
some aren't so friendly anymore, like Ukraine, and
Right.
so that's the game they're playing really. And of course,
Right.
if they're playing games like what they've done with, with your country, with the elections and stuff like that.
Well, and
they're
with
still-
Brexit,
And with Brexit as well,
and with
yeah.
the Trump administration. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing with Putin, is that it's the long game, and that's a game of geopolitics, right?
Yeah.
He is still not over the fact that the Soviet Union broke up, and then Europe consolidated and rose to greater economic power, and he resents that, and he wants to keep on dividing the West further and further while he can try to pull back together some semblance of the Soviet Union or the Russian Empire. I mean, best of luck. I mean, it's in large part a smoke and mirror show, and it does depend on them using computers, using smarts to interrupt things and sow chaos in the West, because they can't exactly fight toe to toe with the West. You're talking about a country that, in terms of when it was in the G8, basically had a folding chair there at the table. It's
Yeah.
a relatively poorer country, much smaller population than the U.S. It's it was always sort of a false equivalency of the U.S. and Russia being sort of opposite sides of the spectrum. There was always a huge imbalance in wealth and population and technology. It was just the nuclear deterrent that kind of gave that semblance
Well, that's right. Yeah.
of parity, but there was never any other parity.
Yeah. I wonder if they have that nuclear influence still. The Russians, they still do, I suppose. Don't they?
Yeah, no, and that's kind of their claim to fame. Not so much. I mean, it still is. I mean, now their big strategic asset is the fact that they supply so much of the petroleum resources used in Europe,
yeah,
the
yeah.
gas.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what keeps your heat on in the winter in
Yeah,
Northern Europe. So,
It seems to be more where, it's quite visibly, it's more of an economic thing, that
Yeah.
seems to be thrown about in terms of power and
Yeah.
superpowers and stuff like
yeah.
that.
Well, again, geopolitics and Russian affairs is not my particular area of expertise, but there are American experts here who quip that essentially modern Russia is a gas station, or as you would say, a petrol station parading as a country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. just an
Wow.
economic game.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, Christian, yeah, it's good for you to come on the show anyway, and just have this little debate about Afghanistan and what's happening more closer to home with you. What's happening with you, and obviously in American domestic side, we'll have to catch up with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well. We'll do another episode and talk about all that good stuff. Yeah. So here in the U.S. God, what is not going on? There's a pandemic still raging. There are people who refuse to take the vaccine because they earn medical degrees at the University of Facebook. The misinformation and disinformation did not end with the 2016 and 2020 elections. We're still dealing with that in cyberspace here in the U.S. and dealing with what the huge impacts that's had on our public health and on our politics. So there's that. Good news, though, is that this relatively new president, President Biden, who campaigned as very much a good old-fashioned centrist, has actually had he's made some good progress in his policies that have been very beneficial to a lot of Americans, halting, or at least we'll see how long it lasts, but pausing payments on student loan debt, excuse me, reinvesting in infrastructure, in human services, childcare, healthcare, that sort of thing. So that's all very positive. Concerned about the midterms, that's a little interesting. And the other thing going on right now, too, is we have redistricting. So every 10 years under the Constitution, we have a census and we measure the population, and then we figure out how many people there are, how many per state, and then that tells you how many congressional districts, how many seats in Congress each state gets. And then from there, the states have to draw the lines for each of those districts within those states. And so in the U.S., it's hard to believe in other countries, it's a very politicized process where state governments get to decide those things. And it can very often be a sort of political weapon to keep certain people in power and box others out of power. So I actually just did an episode of my podcast, Keep It in Perspective, with Dan Vicuña, who is an expert on redistricting with a nonprofit organization here in the U.S. That just went online yesterday. So that was a great conversation as well. You can check that out at letskeepitinperspective.com or on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. But that's what we have going on right now politically here in the U.S. And it is, I will say one thing, it's nice from a media standpoint that when you have a press conference, you have anything going on with the president or his press secretary, you actually have reason and explanation and no one yelling or name calling or being an insolent child in front of a podium. It's a nice change of pace. That's what's going on. And then me personally, I have my backup at the podcast as well, Keep It in Perspective. And Dave, it's been just a pleasure to be back here with you again. It's been a conversation.
I mean, my show's not all politics like yours, but it mixes in politics, news, as well as some bit of sports and entertainment. But of course, I like to put some well-being and life perspective stuff out there as well. Some positive vibes. So it's a mixture of stuff that I've encountered in my own life, really. So
well, I mean, don't have me on for anything sports related. I never even went. I think I went to one baseball game before my son was born, and he liked baseball, so now I go to baseball games. But anything else, American football, I could not explain to you if you put a gun to my head. I have no idea. So.
Well, you wouldn't believe it. Obviously, Olympics. Actually, the Paralympics are on there, but it's about the other Olympics before the. There was a lot of new sports like BMX and skateboarding and stuff like that. Yeah, you wouldn't believe what's coming up in Paris in the next Olympics in 3 years' time.
Oh yeah,
never guess. Breakdancing.
Oh wow. Okay,
that's kind of like entertainment as well, sports and entertainment.
And the skateboarding thing, I don't know how I feel about that. All right.
Well, I think surfing got in there as well. That is a sport, but obviously.
Yes. Well, but then I think
in the Winter Olympics. So.
Yeah, but I think there'd be some people in California and Colorado who would say that snowboarding and skateboarding kind of came from surfing and therefore they're derivative sports. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's just round this up. So, I mean, what do you think with the Afghanistan crisis? Sum up what you think might or should happen. I mean, obviously, you could say there's going to be questions asked.
Yeah. I don't know. I know that there's going to be more chaos. I know that it's going to be a difficult transition, and it's going to be very much wait and see. For right now, it's apparent that there was not some sort of democratic reform. There was not some sort of reimagination of Afghan society with a stable government, democratically responsible government with a strong military. That did not happen. So right now there is going to be somewhat of a power vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum, as they say, and the Taliban has stepped in. And so now it's going to be a waiting game to see what exactly, to what extent do their actions live up to their newly polished rhetoric.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Hopefully not another Syria. I don't think it will with Russia, like say Russia, China, and Pakistan, the neighbouring countries on their side. So you wouldn't really want to mess with that situation.
No, right.
So well, excellent. Well, remind the audience of your podcast again, and then any other website you have. And
So my podcast is Keep It in Perspective, where we talk about politics and public affairs. It's mostly U.S. politics and public affairs, but for those, I have been on plenty of European and Canadian TV and radio, and folks outside the U.S. still get very interested. So if you are interested, the website is letskeepitinperspective.com. You can also search for Keep It in Perspective on Apple Podcasts, formerly iTunes, or on Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, like Reason FM. It's Keep It in Perspective. And again, my name is Christian Hanley.
Excellent. Well, if you can throw me a couple of those links again, I'll have a look for them. You might have sent me in the past, but if you throw links,
I can email them to you. Yeah.
I'll put that in the bottom of the show notes so our listeners can
Perfect.
Go to this whenever they listen. So. Excellent. Christian, always good to have you on this show. You're a good friend now of mine, actually. I think it's about 2 years I've known you now, actually.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years, yeah.
Because I remember we were talking about Brexit, I think, for a while and things like that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your elections was coming up later, so I know that's a good 2 years there. So excellent. Well, good to have you again, and thanks a lot for coming on. And I look forward to maybe we'll just catch up, as I say, with some domestic politics and what's happening over in the UK as well.
That sounds good. Thanks, Dave.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.